What up, everybody? At the end of Force, Season 3, Episode 7, Tommy met up with Stacy Marx, and at this point, Tommy was going through it after just getting into a fight with Diamond Sampson, pissed off, probably stressed out after Diamond had just kicked him out of CBI, and it also looked like he was in physical pain or discomfort when he showed up to talk to Stacy Marx after the fight as well. And a lot of people had wanted me to bring up the fact that Tommy was trying to run from Diamond during the fight, but in my opinion, it's not too much to talk about. Like Ghost used to tell Tommy, think Tommy. It seemed like Tommy decided to think a little too late once he had already got into a fight with Diamond and realized that fighting a 6'4", 300-pound former boxing champion who he had heard stories about almost knocking the heads off people probably wasn't a good idea. So the only way Tommy probably would have been able to win that fight is if he would have hit Diamond with a brick or something, like how Craig hit Debo. Not to mention fighting him in that little small space like that already favors the bigger man. That's my thoughts about Tommy trying to run away during the fight, is that he should have never tried fighting Diamond in the first place, and he should have thought it through before rushing in there off of his emotions and anger. So because of all that, when Tommy met up with Stacy Marx, he was already going through it, only for Stacy Marx to also try to come against Tommy, telling him that she's done working for him, and not only that, but trying to arrest him for Claudia's murder. So because Tommy wasn't in the mood to be diplomatic, he just canceled Christmas on Stacy Marx. And there's no better time to use that term than this week with Stacy Marx, as before the next episode drops, Christmas already will have passed the day before. So we already know that Tommy is going to have all kind of heat on him at this point after Stacy Marx, the U.S. attorney and top mayor candidate for the city of Chicago, is found dead. But because Tommy wasn't expecting to drop Stacy Marx and had to make the decision to take her out on the spot while also going through his own problems, he might have also made a mistake. Because like I mentioned in my episode 7 recap video, Stacy Marx had a phone in her hand the whole time that she was talking to Tommy and could have potentially been recording him. And if you go back and rewatch the scene, notice that she said Tommy's last name during their conversation. So anybody who would listen to the recording, if she was recording their conversation, would know who she was talking to and ultimately who killed her. Also, did Stacy make any kind of log or anything like that about the fact that she was going to meet up with Tommy? And was there a dash cam in Stacy's SUV or potentially street cameras that could have captured what happened? So I definitely think there's a good chance that killing Stacy Marx could end up being Tommy's downfall and why he ultimately ends up having to flee Chicago. Then there's also the fact that Tommy just created a brand new problem when he killed Stacy Marx that he doesn't even know about yet, and that's her husband, Bobby DeFranco. Tommy knows that Stacy was married and was currently in the process of going through a divorce, but at the same time, I don't think he knows that her husband is CPD. And with that said, before Stacy went to meet up with Tommy, she talked to Bobby first and told him how she was compromised. And when Bobby asked her if it was Tommy Egan, she didn't say anything, but by the way she looked at him, he could tell that's who it was about. So Tommy's now made a new enemy with Detective Bobby DeFranco, as the episode 8 trailer shows Tommy with a gun pointed at his head, and I believe this is Bobby DeFranco with his gun pointed at Tommy, because we can see it's definitely a cop from the cop lights that are flashing. But in addition to finding his wife dead, Bobby DeFranco is going to take this extra hard because the fact they weren't on the best terms, and the fact she told him that she was compromised, and even though she wanted to handle it herself, that he didn't do anything to help, and knowing that it was Tommy Egan who killed his wife, he's probably also going to feel bad about the fact that they had an opportunity to bring Tommy in when Vic Flynn lied about Tommy being the one who killed Vargas. But DeFranco stopped Stacy from making the arrest because the way she forced Vic to make his confession, keeping in mind from what we've seen of Bobby DeFranco so far on the show, he's a by-the-book type cop who doesn't color outside the lines. Either though he did go along with his partner when he busted out Cruz's taillight and found the 5 keys. But we could tell at this point that Bobby wasn't comfortable with this, but didn't want to have any problems with his partner. And this whole situation with Bobby DeFranco and his wife, Stacy Marx, getting murdered reminds me of a lot of none other than Detective Don Carter from Power Book 2 Ghost, and how his wife Denise was killed. Before Carter's wife Denise, who was a nurse, was killed by some gang members as they went to finish somebody off, it was actually Don Carter who had the ambition similar to Stacy Marx, as Carter was said to be a rising NYPD officer who was on track to become police commissioner, potentially even mayor himself, until his wife was killed. And that changed everything when he created that task force. And after his wife's death, Carter threw the rule book out the window and started policing by his own self-righteousness, trying to get justice for his wife's death by cleaning up the streets in his own type of way, which ultimately made Carter just as dirty as everybody else by the end of the Book 2 series. Carter even became so obsessed after his wife's death that he even became a little deranged, talking to Denise's pictures like she was still alive. And on a side note concerning Don Carter, because the fact he was obviously connected to Paz Valdez and knew who James St. Patrick was Carter also familiar with Tommy Egan? Because I'm not sure if we've actually seen the last of Don Carter's story, and I think he could potentially come back into play in Power Legacy. And we already know how he'd be going after Tariq, and with Tariq potentially connecting with Tommy in Legacy, that would make things really interesting. But concerning Bobby DeFranco, with him being one to be by the book so far since we've been introduced to his character, it's going to be interesting to see what kind of turn he takes in these last 3 episodes, and if he'll also come to the same type of conclusion that Don Carter came to after his wife's death, and that's if he really wants justice, that he has to get his hands just as dirty as the criminals do, potentially following his own self-righteousness similar to Carter in order to get results by any means necessary. But with all that said, also keep in mind that it wasn't revealed until the mid-season finale of Book 2, Season 4, that Carter was actually even a dirty cop. So I've been thinking that there might be a plot twist even before Stacy's death, since it was mentioned that the 9/7s were connected to the cops, that Bobby DeFranco could potentially even be one of the leaders of the 9/7s. And there you have it. Leave your thoughts, theories, and predictions in the comments.